Well, it's time to catch us up on what's been happening at DFINITY with Dominic Williams. Dominic, you're heading towards the genesis or the public launch of the internet computer. But the question is, what does this actually mean? And what does it also mean for entrepreneurs who might want to build companies on the internet computer?
Well, this is the advent of a whole new paradigm in tech, where a public blockchain can provide a complete solution for building systems, internet services, DeFi, and many other things, so that you can build directly in cyberspace without need for any of traditional tech. So you can build without need for cloud services, servers, firewalls, databases, web servers. None of that stuff that you traditionally use today will be needed anymore. You'll be able to build entirely by writing smart contracts into cyberspace.
This has come up a lot in the last few years, and people have talked about the concept of a blockchain computer. But you're talking about a blockchain computer that can run at web speed with unbounded capacity. Could you want to unpack that for us?
Well, I mean, of course, blockchain is a fast evolving branch of tech. I mean, the first blockchain came out in early 2009, Bitcoin, and that was very slow and only acted as a ledger for these tokens that now play the role of digital gold very successfully. A few years after that, in 2015, Ethereum launched, and it made the blockchain programmable with smart contracts. And it was faster than Bitcoin, but still far too slow to use for general purposes. And for example, it couldn't protect the privacy of data stored on chain. Smart contracts couldn't directly serve web into browsers and things like that. So the internet computer takes us on that final jump and provides the world with a public blockchain that runs at web speed, so it's fast enough for general use. Smart contracts can serve web directly into browsers. And most importantly, it has unbounded capacity, which essentially means that as demand for on-chain computation grows, it just grows its capacity. It grows its capacity by expanding its network. The network actually is comprised of special standardized node machines. So the internet computer runs on these standardized node machines, which are installed in independent data centers around the world, in much the same way as the internet runs on routing devices.
But doesn't that mean that people are hidebound by that capacity? And is it back to old-fashioned server architecture?
No, not at all. So the internet computer is a serverless environment. There's no concept of a server or compute instance like you have on Amazon Web Services. The internet computer provides a seamless environment for smart contracts, and it can hold any number of smart contracts. So that universe is as big as you need it to be. And one of the other advantages of this is that the cost of computation remains very low and constant. And that compares to traditional blockchains, which have finite compute capacity, and therefore must use things called fee markets to determine which computations actually get run, which pushes the costs of computations up to enormous levels.
How different, again, is what you're doing compared to using a platform like Ethereum, for instance?
Well, Ethereum is great for DeFi and it introduced the world to smart contracts, but it certainly doesn't scale, first of all. So, a gigabyte of storage on Ethereum will cost you about $5 million. By comparison, a gigabyte of storage on the internet computer will cost you less than $5 a year. So we're talking about a 1,000,000x reduction in price. And there are, of course, many other areas that the internet computer also delivers features that you need if you want to build, for example, a mass market, hyperscale internet service on chain. It can run at web speed. Your smart contracts can serve web directly into browsers. And all of this, of course, is within an environment that also supports things that only blockchains can provide, like tokenization and autonomy. So what's so important for entrepreneurs out there is that on the internet computer, you can reimagine how you build everything. Sure, look, if you're an enterprise, you can reimagine how you build enterprise systems. You can build them on the internet computer where they'll be tamper-proof. You don't have to protect systems on the internet computer with a firewall because they're built on a tamper-proof platform, and that's one of the advantages of smart contracts. But if you're an entrepreneur, you can completely reimagine how an internet service works. So, for example, you might build open Uber, and you might provide tokens to early riders and early drivers to incentivize participation. If you want to create a social media platform, you might use tokens to create a system, an economic system where the community both helps in providing signal regarding what content should be promoted and also plays the role of moderator. And you might design it in such a way that it becomes far more viral. If you want to create something like open photos, Google Photos, say, you might provide APIs that are non-revocable so that, lots of other teams of developers can extend open photos. So, whereas, Google Photos only supplies a handful of image filters to use, open photos might be able to provide its users with hundreds and hundreds of image filters because the broader community can participate and create filters for users to apply to their photographs.
I want to push you on this because we know that the crypto space got hotter and more mainstream in 2020 and obviously this year as well. But there's also this sort of open internet boom that you've hinted at that, we know that the dot-com boom took off because it was partly enabled by ability to run open source servers like Apache and Linux. So do you think we're sort of heading into a kind of a similar new era of entrepreneurial opportunity because of that sort of open source nature that's been opened up recently?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's aware of the boom that's taken place in blockchain already. And, I think the space is still very nascent and this is still the beginning. But the reason there's been so much energy in blockchain is it supports a completely new way of doing things, where you can build on these sort of public chains in cyberspace. You build using software that's tamper-proof, that can process tokens, that can be autonomous, and all kinds of other things. And the internet computer takes that and pushes the boundaries with respect to speed, cost, capacity, enables smart contracts to serve web experiences directly and things like that, and many other things actually, so that the scope of what you can do on blockchain is greatly increased. So now you can actually build a mass market internet service on chain. And if you're an entrepreneur, you can make that an open internet service with governance tokens. And you can, for example, sell those governance tokens to raise financing. So you can actually raise money from the decentralized internet.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get into next was the idea of building a company. So, we're familiar with, fundraising in the traditional internet space using VCs and stuff. What about the advantages and disadvantages of building an open infrastructure company or a startup? I mean, for instance, talking about pitching an open internet company or fundraising from an open internet company. What are the kinds of things that are going to be different, do you think, in this world?
Well, again, it's a whole new paradigm. So when you change the platform paradigm, you change the computing paradigm, you also inevitably change the business paradigm. And the way in which blockchain projects, the actual layer one chains have raised money and financed themselves, will now be extended to layer two, people building on top of the chains. So for example, DFINITY is a not-for-profit foundation based in Zurich, Switzerland, and it created a ledger of governance tokens that will be used to control the internet computer, and it sold these governance tokens to raise money for R&D. And the foundation itself is a not-for-profit. There are no members. It can't be sold. It can't pivot. Can't be acquired. The value is actually in the network and the governance tokens. Now, that same model will apply to entrepreneurs building open internet services. So for example, I think we're going to demonstrate something called, at the moment, just referred to as Open Chat, that a team of 2 developers have been working on. And, at some point in the future, they might turn that into an open internet service. Essentially, Open Chat will be the internet service equivalent of an open source software project. And it'll run autonomously and be controlled by governance tokens. Now, the individuals behind Open Chat could potentially, when they convert Open Chat into an open internet service so that it's controlled by governance tokens, then sell these governance tokens to raise funding to support a bigger R&D team. And they could also indeed just share these governance tokens with other developers on the internet to incentivize them. They could, create feature and bug bounties, paid rewarded, where the rewards are paid in these governance tokens. So, sometimes you're going to see, something more akin to the traditional model where there's a company is incorporated, and that company raises venture capital initially, and then perhaps creates an open internet service, and for example, eventually maybe dissolves itself and disperses all of the governance tokens it's acquired in that process to its stockholders. Other times, we're going to just see, sort of ecosystems of developers emerging on the internet that collaboratively build out these and maintain these open internet services.
So do you think that the concept of an exit is sort of different when you're operating on this kind of business model?
Absolutely. So today, the traditional model is that you incorporate a company, hire a team, get a prototype, get some seed money, go to VCs, do an A round, B round, and so on and so forth. And the ultimate aim is to get large enough you can IPO and make your company public, whereupon you can trade your shares freely on a stock market such as NASDAQ or NYSE. In the future, people are going to create open internet services, and the moment they convert their prototype internet service into an open internet service, they're going to get, say, a billion governance tokens, and they're going to be able to immediately start selling those governance tokens via the internet itself, via the decentralized internet, to raise funds to support the further development of that project. And we've already seen hints of this kind of thing with ICOs. And it's probably fair to say the initial ICO boom was a bit chaotic, and a lot of funds were misdirected, and some things were successful, but a lot of things weren't successful. But that's going to get much more sophisticated in the future, and we're going to see more and more teams raising money through the internet itself. And certainly when you talk about an exit, I think, look, if you're a founder and you create a successful open internet service, the needs of an open internet service sort of behove you to sell your stake down to, say, 15%, because it's not an open internet service if you have a controlling stake. So, certainly you will get liquidity much earlier on than you would in the traditional model.
If it's the case that these kinds of companies will see liquidity faster, how much funding does an early stage company need, or is it just a matter of releasing tokens in the way that you mentioned?
Well, that's a really good question. Certainly in the first ICO boom on Ethereum, vast sums of money were raised by a variety of startups. And it's not at all clear that the sums of money they raised were necessary or commensurate with the actual stage of the projects or aims of the projects involved. So I think it's certainly the case that currently it's much easier to raise funding within the decentralized ecosystem than it is to raise funding the traditional route through angel investors and venture capitalists. I think as the space matures and there are more professional entrepreneurs seeking to raise money through the decentralized internet rather than the traditional route, I guess market forces will equalize the difficulty eventually. But certainly at the moment, it's a lot easier to raise capital in the decentralized ecosystem.
What are some of the disadvantages of going into this world? Or do you not see any at all?
Honestly, speaking from an entrepreneurial perspective, one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is that, it's much easier to surf a wave than to be paddling out. Like, timing is everything. Like, you want to identify a rapidly expanding opportunity and place yourself there. And it's true that, when you get these paradigm shifts, that's where you get these waves of opportunity that you can surf. And that's reflected, I guess, in how much easier it is to raise money within the decentralized ecosystem today than it is through traditional routes. So certainly, I believe the open internet boom is going to be absolutely colossal. If you consider the size of the blockchain boom, which is part of that, you can see it's already pretty colossal, and we're just in the foothills of what's going to happen. All of our online services are going to be reimagined in completely new ways as open internet services that run autonomously on-chain and in some ways exist almost like the sort of equivalent of an open software project, but in other ways also are able to be very competitive because they can leverage all kinds of new functionality. And one of the biggest things, I think, is that it enables a much more collaborative approach to building internet services, so that you get a much more dynamic, innovative, and ultimately richer internet ecosystem. And you combine that with tokenization and other things, and it becomes very apparent why this new breed of internet services is ultimately going to outcompete closed monopolistic systems over the next 10 to 20 years.
Sure, but it sounds like a fantastic Shangri-La, but you and I both know that large swathes of these internet systems are controlled by companies like Apple and Google and Android and iOS. How do you see your vision playing out in that world, in, say, for instance, the smartphone world?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think one of the biggest, one of the major hurdles that will slow down the growth of the open internet ecosystem is indeed big tech's stranglehold on smartphones. And the reason is they can decide which services appear in the app stores. And for that reason, I think a lot of early open internet services will be entirely web-based. So even on a smartphone, you'll access them through web browsers. But moving on a few more years, I think we're going to see open versions of we're going to see new operating systems, new kinds of devices. Without getting into too many details, we've conceived of new kinds of phones that just run WebAssembly, and you don't have an app store. You just put in a URL and it sort of loads the WebAssembly applet onto your phone and runs it in a sandbox. I think if you go forward 5+ years, we're going to see new kinds of smartphone.
It could be the case. So we look forward to seeing that happen. Lots of people put blockchain into a kind of a box, don't we? And it happens a lot, especially in the media. Do you think blockchain's still a sort of a startup vertical, or do you think it's going to be more pervasive than that?
I like using the phrase open internet boom, and blockchain's just one part of that. So traditionally, when people talk about blockchain, they mean cryptocurrency or DeFi created with smart contracts. The internet computer transforms blockchain into a full compute platform by giving it unbounded capacity, enabling it to run at web speed, enabling smart contracts to serve web and many other things. So, really what it's enabling is an open internet boom where people can build on the internet. That's why it's called the internet computer. And the word blockchain can be misunderstood to mean, well, this is just something to do with cryptocurrency or smart contracts running DeFi. So, yeah, I will see how the terminology emerges. Maybe the blockchain takes on new meaning with the internet computer. We'll see.
The other thing, you mentioned DeFi a lot. Well, Silicon Valley became big because it was all about the physical proximity of people. 30-mile radius for VCs. I remember speaking to a VC who would only invest in startups that he could skateboard to. What effect do you think this decentralized route is going to have on founders? I mean, we're talking about new kinds of apps and platforms being developed basically anywhere.
It's going to have an absolutely tremendous effect and be very impactful in a good way. So one of my personal tests for the success of the internet computer is that it would enable somebody who's smart and determined in a developing world nation, such as a computer nerd based in Lagos, Nigeria, to build, launch, finance, and make successful a mass market internet service. So with the internet computer, someone is going to be able to build an internet service using, for example, a low-cost Chromebook where they just write smart contract code, push it straight up onto the internet computer, get their prototype internet service going, convert it into an open internet service, start selling the governance tokens to raise funds for development, or using the governance tokens to incentivize other developers all around the world who are connected to the internet to start participating in building out the internet service. So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that I hope we can fix is that today, only a small fraction of the world's potential talent is able to have a shot at building an internet service. And for the most part, it's people located here in Silicon Valley. You can do it in Europe, but it's much harder. But in other places, it's several times even more difficult. And the internet computer can help level the playing field so that the remaining 99% of the world's talent gets a shot at building the internet of the future.
So thinking about the other end of the spectrum, away from a grassroots developer, say you're a big company already, you've raised a Series B funding round, for instance, enterprise SaaS product, you've got 10,000 paying customers or something. What would be the point, for instance, of incorporating something like the internet computer? When would it be too late to leverage that technology?
Well, that's a good question. I think there are enormous opportunities for industries as a whole and corporations within the public blockchain space. I'll give you a great example. There's a project called Origin based in Switzerland, and they've created a pan-industry platform aimed initially at the Swiss watch industry, which wants to track the provenance of Swiss watches. So they've connected this platform with this very clever digital fingerprinting technology that can look at a watch, detect microscopic imperfections, if you like, or differences in the way that the markers of the hour markers are laid out, and re-identify that watch later on. But they're extending their platform into the luxury world generally, with handbags and jewelry and so on and so forth. And then once they've done that, they'll go into yet more industries. Now, that platform is being created by the Origin Foundation, but the industries involved are participating as well. So the governance tokens for that platform that tracks the provenance of these luxury items are being dispersed widely amongst industry participants. So that's an example of how an extremely valuable platform can be brought into being, and the very, very traditional companies that have often been around in some cases for hundreds of years can participate in the value creation.
What about industries do you think are going to benefit from this? Because there are sectors which suffer a lot from this massive centralization. What do you think are the kinds of industries that are going to benefit most from this decentralization?
Well, entrepreneurs building open internet services and DeFi. So my belief is that, 10 years from now, DeFi will be as big as traditional finance. 20 years from now, traditional finance will be tiny compared to DeFi. Just DeFi alone is an absolutely colossal, stunning entrepreneurial opportunity. That's one of your waves, right? Which you can surf. Open internet services are going to be just as big as that. I think pretty much the entire internet ecosystem is going to be reimagined around this model. Again, 10 years, I'd say that open internet services will be as big as the sort of, closed proprietary services run by big tech monopolies.
Do you see new kinds of business models developing once people create companies on the open web?
Yeah, so I think, so I'm sort of, I'm agnostic on this. I sort of reserve judgment. I think, certainly when you build on the internet computer, it becomes much more straightforward to implement things like micropayment models. So, for example, it becomes much more straightforward to, create content where, a user can see something for the equivalent payment of 10 cents, and do that at lower friction. But generally, I believe there are reasons why those models haven't already taken root. And people like getting free content, for example, and that means that advertising will continue to play a role. So I think while it's possible, and we will see new business models on the internet computer, and certainly it's possible to create all kinds of new business models, we'll still see the old models around, like advertising.
I'm sure we will see lots of those kinds of models change and evolve as this thing grows. But finally, I'd like to ask you, what's your vision of the ideal scenario for an entrepreneur in this space? It's somebody in a refugee camp in Africa who just creates something and suddenly becomes incredibly successful overnight, or is it somebody a kid from a working class family, blue collar family in north of England, or is it that kind of vision you got?
All of that. Look, we're going to, the open internet and blockchain generally, it presents an amazing entrepreneurial opportunity. And there are going to be lots of smart people in Silicon Valley who continue to successfully build out new enterprises on this new platform. But, I think one of our indicators of success is going to be that, the kind of people you just mentioned are able to participate and compete on a level playing field. And that's going to be possible because, you can, imagine, look, if you were a computer nerd in Lagos, Nigeria, you couldn't even get an Amazon Web Services account, right? And using traditional infrastructure, you actually need quite a lot of computing equipment in order to build anything, right? With the internet computer, you can just write code in a web browser on a cheap Chromebook, say, and push it to the internet computer to build your prototype internet service. And just from there, turn it into an open internet service and start selling the governance tokens to raise money or incentivize other developers around the internet and bootstrap the whole thing from where you are. So it's certainly true that we're going to be extending opportunity all the way around the world. And I think that's brilliant for the world economy. We're going to be bringing our vastly more of our human assets to bear within the tech economy, and that can only be a good thing.
Well, I think that's probably a good note to end on. So thanks very much, Dominic.
Thanks, Mike.